I'm Megan.
I'm Blake.
And for our presentation we had topic number 3, which was titled CNF, Truth, Memory, and Invention. And the basis of this topic was to pick 2 to 4 essays, could be from the same author or different authors, but you can tell we chose Sarah Beth Childers, and we had to show you guys how they represent the quote at the end, and also how they represent the CNF contract.
So just some fun quotes to open up. Ernest Hemingway once said, "I rate one page of masterpiece to 91 pages of shit. I try to put the shit in the wastebasket." And he really had a way with words. And then the next quote, although Stephen King's a fiction writer, we feel it really connects with what we're trying to, and especially with this next quote. But Stephen King says, "I think the best stories all end up being about the people rather than the event," which is to say, character-driven. And then William Zinsser, in Tell It Slant, said, "Unlike autobiography, which moves in a dutiful line from birth to fame, memoir narrows the lens, focusing on a time in the writer's life that was unusually vivid, such as childhood or adolescence, that was framed by war or travel or public service or some other special circumstance." So just a little bit of background on Sarah Beth. She's from Huntington, West Virginia. She grew up listening to the stories from Appalachian family members and friends, and she's currently working on a piece called Shmoo, which is a memoir about her younger brother Josh, who passed away in 2012. And she really enjoys practicing and talking about the Appalachian culture.
And then just some background facts on the Appalachian culture. It's present in 397 countries and 13 states, which includes West Virginia. And there's 4 subgroups that make up the culture, which the subgroups are descendants of the westward movement, so like landowners, politicians, the very self-independent people, coal miners, loggers, and factory workers, so those would be the people that are kind of towards the bottom of the educational system. They have like very few skills. Professionals, those would be people that moved with their family to the culture due to profession, and then returning Appalachians, so people who practiced it before and moved away and now they're coming back. And the Appalachian people are very close to nature, as well as they have a deep belief in God, and this can be seen through their crafts, traditional music, food, customs, and language.
So for our thesis, we said Sarah Beth Childers, through the vital elements of character development, imagery, and voice, is able to produce vivid and relatable creative nonfiction pieces that demonstrate the idea that all truth must conform to music, which is a quote from Richard Hugo.
Alright, so what is character development? So this is a quote that just kind of describes it, doesn't really say what it exactly is, but it's from Burroway, and it says, "By our actions we discover what we really believe and simultaneously reveal ourselves to others." So Sarah Beth, as we talked about, uses her characters to get across her points. She uses them to create the creative nonfiction contract and have the trust of the readers. And then what is imagery? According to Burroway again, an image is a word or series of words that evokes one or more of the 5 senses. So Sarah Beth uses her imagery in our examples that are further back in the PowerPoint, and they evoke to some of the senses, such as probably hearing and sight. And then for our interpretation of voice, a quote that goes along with it is, "A character's voice is a chosen mimicry, a skill to pursue in order to develop rich characters both in their narratives and their dialogue." Alright, so I'm going to tell you guys about both stories. And so some character development examples would be, well, some of it's true, but these stories have grown over the years. And then this is a really good example for her showing, like telling the reader that it's part of the CNF, saying that some of it's true, but they've grown over the years, so that's going with truth and invention. You know, some of it is true, as she says, but then she states that it's grown over the years, and that's her inventing the other parts that go along with it just so it's more appealing to the reader. And then for this one, this is kind of unique. She includes different tiny snippets of dialogue in her stories, and such as like pulpy mass, nest of anacondas, and a low sucking sound. And I think this is different from this because she's directly stating it here, but here she kind of just like hides it in her work, but it's still indirectly stating it. And for this one, "I don't know how we got it out of the water. The thing was made of iron." And then obviously the "I don't know how" part is the CNF part. And for imagery, her images really appeal to the senses of sight and sound. Sound might be debatable per person, but she says, "During a thunderstorm in the South Pacific, an enormous green tail washed over the prow of a ship. World War II was winding down." So here she's telling you what's happening, the thunderstorm. She's telling you when it's happening. So, I mean, everybody knows what World War II is. That gets you thinking like images of World War II. And then she also tells you about the enormous green tail washing over the prow of the ship, and that is a very vivid image that you can just make up your own, so like I might see it differently than you. And then for this one, Grandpa also related yarns about his childhood on a small West Virginia farm, about the day he got lost as a 6-year-old on his solitary walk to the one-room schoolhouse. Again, what's highlighted in green would be the images that appeal to your looking. And then for the last one, the sailors cling by their fingernails to the paint on the deck railings, muscle glistening under skin in the bursts of lightning. And here it's really just the same thing as the one above. For voice, we kind of took voice as when she slips back into the dialogue from her background in the Appalachian family. She says, "Then we climbed back into the car and Grandpa drove us down a gravel road to the weedy cemetery where our ancestors lie." Now, the word ancestors in this quote is what got me. If I'm telling you I'm going to a cemetery, I'm not going to say I'm going to see my ancestors. Probably talk about someone that passed. So for me, it was the wording in this sentence that kind of made me think about her going back to how she grew up. And then the second one, before the state government flooded river water over the farms, filling the valleys between the oak and maple covered holes, workers exhumed the bodies buried here and there under little clumps of family headstones. And then, obviously, what's highlighted in green would be her voice, state government, and then the family headstones. And then for the last one, it's a repeat quote, but Grandpa also related yarns about his childhood on a small West Virginia farm, about the day he got lost as a 6-year-old on his solitary walk to the one-room schoolhouse. I didn't go to a one-room schoolhouse. I don't know if any of you did. But I didn't also live on a farm that was small in West Virginia, so that's where I thought she slipped back into voice as well.
Alright, so as for Scissors, it was another piece Sarah Beth wrote, mostly about how her mother kind of was controlling in a way where she wasn't, she didn't know she was controlling about the length of her daughter's hair. So, for character development, the first quote I have is, "As I grew older, I began to comprehend the damage those childhood haircuts must have done to my mother." So, it's evident that her mother's damaged. She doesn't really go out and say what had happened exactly, but she definitely conveys the fact that her mother still haunts her, those childhood haircuts. So for the second one, I got the feeling that if I had climbed down from the van unscathed with my hair cut off, my mother would have considered a great misfortune. So what Sarah Beth does really well is develop characters by author. So even though she's a character in the piece, she's still the author because she's narrating the piece. So when she says this, she's developing her mom, where her mom doesn't actually do this or say anything like this, but she feels as though it's what her mother would do, and she develops her in that way. So, and for the third quote, my mother asked me, her voice collected and firm. This was a woman we could rally behind, a woman worth a few extra inches of hair. So as I said before, it was about how her mother was very controlling about the daughter's lengths of their hair. And throughout the story you can see she's controlling, but she still cares for her daughters. And at the end, even though her sister cuts off a lock of her hair, her mother comes in and instead of freaking out, ends up consoling the daughter, which Sarah Beth finds admirable in her mother. For imagery, first quote I have is, "A pungent cloud of permanent solution spread through the house, driving my siblings and me out onto the porch. I imagine my mother at my age, trapped in that chemical cloud, wishing to escape through a window." Now, obviously she doesn't mean an actual cloud of any sort, but there was a lot of tension in the room whenever her mother was cutting her grandmother's hair. And that's what she was trying to get at with that part, was just the tension. And then the second quote I have is, "When my mother sees hair between scissor blades, it's the 1960s, and she's sitting in a grimy salon chair. She looks down at the floor, already coated with frizzy curls, and she hears her mother's voice, 'Take off the teensiest bit more.'" So here, we can all, I've never been really in a salon, but I know what a salon looks like. And I think we all know kind of what a salon looks like, especially in the 1960s. So we see lots of colors and maybe outfits that are different. And then we can almost hear the whisper with the italicized letters, "Take off the teensiest bit more." So, and then for my third quote, but the way my mother reacted, my mother pulled into the driveway after a last-minute grocery run, and I raced outside yelling, "She's got the scissors." So we can hear someone actually coming outside and yelling, and you can feel the urgency, and also in the fact that she had a last-minute to grocery run, so we all have kind of been on a last-minute grocery run before, so we all know what that's like. My voice examples are very simple. So like the first and third one are very similar in that they both say like my siblings and me or my sisters and me, and I found that to be very informal and very true to Sarah Beth's voice and kind of maintaining that Appalachian culture. And in the second one, the way I read it, being from sort of the Appalachian area, instead of Marcy spent her afternoons bathing in creek mud, I kind of read it as crick mud because a lot of people in that area say that, and even like my dad still says that, so it's kind of, I feel like that was very true to her voice and herself.
Alright, so how do all of these elements work together? So kind of going back to what both of us said about her voice, her imagery, and then the character development, she really uses her characters to present the CNF contract, and while reading it, you know, I don't feel like she's lying to me. I feel like part of it is true, and we all know that she uses snippets of things from like periods of time that can be like 6 years apart, but she somehow makes them flow together, which wouldn't be true, but to CNF it is true. So she really works all these elements together to relate to the quote, "all truths must conform to music," as well as keeping the CNF contract with her reader. So then I pretty much just explained how they all relate to "all truth must conform to music," but again, another quote that we found that relates to that is from Hugo again, and it says, "Give up what you think you have to say and you'll find something better." So Sarah Beth does a great job at this. She really uses what she can, but then she finds the other, I guess, tunes that would go along with it that would make it more open to the reader and more relatable in this time period. That's what it works.